Welcome back for another deep dive. We always talk about how humans have this unique sense of fairness, right? Like it's something special that sets us apart from animals.
Right.
But have you ever wondered if maybe our animal friends actually have some sense of fairness too?
Hmm.
That's what we're going to be looking into today. We've got some research articles and real-world observations to try to get into the minds of animals.
Yeah, it's a question scientists have been wrestling with for ages. Like, do animals even notice when things are unfair? And if they do, how does that compare to us humans?
Yeah.
It all comes down to something called inequity aversion.
Inequity aversion.
Yeah, basically, it's like how much we hate getting a worse deal than someone else.
And we've all been there, right?
Right.
Like remember being a kid and your sibling gets a bigger slice of cake?
Yeah.
That feeling of like, hey, wait a minute. That's not fair.
Exactly. And researchers think animals might feel something similar too.
Ah, interesting.
One of the ways they study this is with these things called token exchange experiments. So imagine you're a capuchin monkey and you learn this trick where you give back a token and you get a treat.
Oh,
But then you see your monkey buddy do the same thing and they get a way better treat for the same work.
ooh.
So the question is, do you notice? Do you care? And these experiments are designed to find out.
That is so cool.
Yeah, and there's this really famous study they did with these capuchin monkeys.
Oh, yeah. I think I've heard of this one.
Yeah, so two monkeys, they do the same task, right? But one gets this juicy grape and the other gets a plain old cucumber.
So one gets like the best reward and the other gets kind of a bad reward.
Yeah, and let me tell you, the monkey who got the cucumber was not having it.
Oh, no.
Like, they actually threw the cucumber back at the researchers.
There's no way.
Yeah, talk about adding insult to injury.
So that monkey was definitely not happy with the cucumber.
Nope, not at all. And that study was really important, actually.
How so?
Well, it kind of changed the game because before that, everyone thought that animals were just reacting to, like, not getting the good thing.
What?
But this study suggested that maybe they were actually picking up on the unfairness of it all. Like, why am I getting this when he's getting that for the same work?
So it's not just about the reward itself. It's about the comparison.
Exactly. And that sparked a ton of new research into this whole idea of animal fairness.
So what have they found since then?
Well, there's this article from OIPA that talks about how capuchin monkeys will straight up refuse to do anything if they see other monkeys getting rewards without even working.
Really?
Yeah, like they're going on strike. They're like, nope, not doing it until the system is fair.
Wow, that's incredible.
It's not just monkeys, though. Even dogs seem to have some sense of resentment when things are unfair.
Really? Even dogs?
Oh, yeah. They might hesitate to do a command if they see other dogs getting rewarded for the same thing and they don't get anything.
Oh, that's kind of sad, actually.
Yeah, it is. But it's pretty amazing to think that our furry friends might be more aware of fairness than we give them credit for.
For sure. And I was just reading in that same article about how that's not just primates either.
What do you mean?
It says that crows and ravens also seem to know when they're getting a raw deal.
Really?
Yeah, isn't that wild?
That is pretty cool. So it sounds like this fairness thing might be more common in the animal kingdom than we thought.
Yeah, maybe it's not just a human thing after all.
Right. And what's interesting is that even though both dogs and monkeys seem to react to unfairness, they do it in different ways.
Oh, how so?
Well, monkeys, they seem to really care about what kind of reward they get compared to others, like the grape versus the cucumber thing.
Right.
But dogs, it seems like they're usually happy as long as they get something, regardless of what others are getting.
So for dogs, it's more about just getting something rather than what they get.
It seems that way. So for some species, it's not just about the value of the reward, it's about the social context too.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But it makes you wonder, why would this sense of fairness exist in so many different types of animals?
That's a great question. Like, why would they even care?
Well, some scientists think it might have something to do with the evolution of cooperation.
Cooperation.
Yeah, think about it. For species that need to work together, like to hunt or raise their young,
Right.
having a system that's fair could be really important for survival.
Oh, I see. Because if you're always getting taken advantage of, you're not going to want to cooperate anymore.
Exactly. So this built-in sense of fairness could be like social glue that holds the group together because everyone feels like they're getting a fair shake.
Makes sense. Now, we've also got this other article here. It's a scholarly article called Fairness in Animals, Where to from Here.
Yeah.
And it really dives deep into the research.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one.
It talks about how for some animals, there needs to be a task involved for them to feel a sense of unfairness.
What do you mean?
Like it's not enough to just give them unequal rewards. They have to feel like they earned those rewards.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And the article gives some really cool examples of this.
Like what?
Well, for example, chimps are more likely to choose partners who will share food with them rather than those who are stingy.
Oh, so they're thinking ahead about who will be fair to them.
Yeah, and capuchin monkeys, they'll actually refuse to cooperate if the situation makes it possible for someone to take all the rewards.
Wow, it's like they're trying to prevent unfairness from happening in the first place.
Exactly. It's like they understand the concept of fairness on some level.
Yeah, definitely. Now,
Yeah.
that article also brings up this interesting idea about different orders of fairness.
Orders of fairness. I'm not sure I follow.
Okay, so think of it this way. First order fairness is basically realizing that you got a smaller slice of cake than your sibling.
Okay.
It's about focusing on your own loss.
Gotcha.
But then there's second order fairness, and that's more like understanding that even though you got the bigger slice, it's still not really fair that your sibling got less.
Ah. So it's about seeing the bigger picture and not just your own situation.
Exactly. And what the research suggests is that this second order fairness is not as common in animals.
So it's like a step towards the more complex sense of justice that we see in humans.
Right. It's like a stepping stone on the evolutionary path.
That makes a lot of sense. And this article also mentioned that animals' reactions to unfairness aren't as consistent or strong as what we see in humans.
Yeah, it's definitely more nuanced and complex.
It's like there's a whole spectrum of sensitivity to fairness across different species.
Totally.
Hmm.
But even with those differences, the evidence for some level of fairness in animals is pretty compelling.
What do you mean?
Well, there was this one study where chimps sometimes refused better rewards if it meant their partner got a worse deal.
Really? That's amazing.
Yeah, it's not something they always do, but the fact that it happens at all is pretty remarkable.
It's like they're valuing fairness and their relationships over getting the best reward for themselves.
Yeah, exactly. And this brings us to another interesting idea from the article. Fair play.
Fair play, like in sports.
Kind of. They were talking about it more in the context of how dogs play.
Okay.
You know how puppies who don't play fair, like if they're too rough or they cheat, they might end up getting shunned by the other pups.
Right, they have to learn those social rules.
Yeah, exactly. And the researchers think that this fair play behavior might actually be related to that second order fairness we we're talking about.
Oh, I see. So by learning to play by the rules, they're actually avoiding behaviors that could hurt their social bonds.
Right. They're thinking about the long-term consequences of their actions.
Wow. So even in something as simple as play, there are these underlying rules that promote fairness and cooperation.
It seems that way. It really makes you think about how much of this is instinct and how much is learned.
Yeah, for sure. And that Wikipedia article we were looking at earlier, it mentions a bunch of different species that have been studied for inequity aversion, like primates, birds, even fish.
It's amazing how much research has been done in this area.
I know, right? So what have they found when they looked at all these different species? Is there a clear pattern, or is it more complicated than that?
Well, as you might expect, the findings are kind of a mixed bag.
Oh, really?
Yeah, some species, like those brown capuchin monkeys, they consistently show signs of inequity aversion in different studies. But for others, like squirrel monkeys, the results are all over the place.
Huh. Interesting.
Sometimes they react to unfairness, and sometimes they don't. It's not a simple yes or no answer.
So even within a single species, there's a lot of variation.
Exactly. And the Wikipedia article points out that even small differences in how the experiments are designed can have a big impact on the results.
Oh, like what?
Well, for example, whether the animals are right next to each other or if they can clearly see what the other one is getting can change how they react.
So it's not as easy as saying, this species is fair and this one isn't.
Right. There's a whole interplay of factors, the social dynamics, the individual personalities, even the specific setup of the experiment.
It's a lot to consider.
Definitely. And to make things even more interesting, even within a study that shows evidence of inequity aversion, there's often variation in how individual animals react.
So some are more sensitive to fairness than others.
Yeah, exactly. Some animals might be real sticklers for fairness and always reject a less preferred reward,
Okay.
while others might be more tolerant of the inequality.
It's just like with people. Some of us get more worked up about things being unfair than others.
That's a great way to put it. It's fascinating to see those individual personalities come out, even in these controlled research settings.
For sure. So it sounds like there's not one easy answer to the question of whether animals have a sense of fairness.
Yeah, it's more like a gradient, a spectrum of sensitivity and responses.
And that's what makes it so interesting to study right. There's still so much we don't know.
Absolutely. And this whole idea of inequity aversion might be just one piece of the puzzle when it comes to understanding animal behavior and cognition.
That's a good point. It's all connected somehow.
Right. And the more we learn, the more we realize how much more there is to discover.
I'm already hooked.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of ground here today, from monkeys and dogs to crows and ravens and even fish.
It's amazing to think about all the different ways that fairness might play a role in the animal kingdom.
I agree. I think we need to take a quick break, though, to process all this amazing information.
Yeah, good idea. Let's take a break and then come back to dive even deeper into this fascinating world of animal fairness.
Sounds good. We'll be right back after a short break. Okay, so we're back, and I'm still thinking about all those different species that show signs of inequity aversion. It's amazing.
It really is. It seems like this sense of fairness might be much more widespread than we initially thought.
Right. And before the break, we were looking at that Wikipedia article, and it listed all sorts of animals that have been studied, like squirrel monkeys, olive baboons, bonobos.
Yeah, and even cleaner fish.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about those. So it's not just limited to primates or even mammals?
Nope. It seems like a lot of different animals might have some capacity for understanding fairness.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
But I'm also kind of confused because we were saying how the results are mixed for some species.
Right. Well, that's the thing about research. It's not always black and white.
Yeah.
Some species, like those capuchin monkeys, they pretty reliably react to unfairness in a lot of different studies.
Okay.
But for other species, like the squirrel monkeys, the results are all over the place.
So sometimes they care about fairness and sometimes they don't.
It seems that way. And that just highlights how complex this whole issue is.
Yeah, it's definitely not a simple answer.
And even those differences in how experiments are designed can have a big impact on the results.
Oh, right, like you were saying before about how whether the animals are right next to each other or not can change how they react.
Exactly. So it's not just about the animals themselves. It's about the whole context, the
Right.
social dynamics, the experimental setup.
It's a lot to keep track of.
It is. And then on top of that, you have individual differences to think about.
Individual differences.
Yeah, like even within a study that shows clear evidence of inequity aversion, you'll often see variation in how individual animals respond.
So some animals are more sensitive to unfairness than others.
Exactly. Some might be really strict about it and always reject a less preferred reward if they think it's unfair,
Okay.
while others might be more flexible and willing to tolerate some degree of inequality.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like some people are really bothered by things being unfair, while others are more easygoing about it.
Exactly. It's like they have their own little personalities.
So it sounds like there's no easy answer to the question of whether animals have a sense of fairness.
Right. It's more nuanced than that. It's not a simple yes or no.
It's like a big spectrum with different species and even individuals falling at different points along that spectrum.
Yeah, I like that analogy. And that's what makes this research so fascinating. It's constantly challenging our assumptions about the animal mind.
And it makes you wonder what other surprises we might uncover as we learn more.
Absolutely. The animal kingdom is full of mysteries just waiting to be unraveled.
And this whole idea of fairness,
Yeah.
how it might have evolved,
Mm.
and why it exists in so many different animals, it's a really intriguing puzzle.
It is. And, one of the main theories out there is that this inequity aversion thing might be tied to the evolution of cooperation.
Right. Because for animals that rely on each other to survive, it makes sense that fairness would be important.
Yeah, if you're constantly being taken advantage of, you're probably not going to want to cooperate anymore.
Exactly. So having a sense of fairness could be like a way to ensure that everyone contributes and everyone benefits.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
like a social contract that helps maintain those important relationships.
And that makes a lot of sense for animals that live in complex social groups like primates.
Right. But then you have those species like the cleaner fish that we were talking about earlier.
Oh, yeah. They show signs of inequity aversion, but they don't really engage in the kind of long-term cooperation that you see in primates.
Right. So it might not be as simple as just saying that fairness equals cooperation.
Yeah, maybe there are other factors at play.
Absolutely. There could be different evolutionary pressures, different social structures, different ecological challenges. It's all connected in some way.
It's like a giant web, and we're just starting to understand the connections.
And that's the beauty of science. It's a never-ending process of discovery.
I agree. So while we might not have all the answers yet, the search for understanding animal behavior, especially something as complex as fairness, is a journey worth taking.
Totally. And the more we learn, the more we realize how much more there is to explore.
And it's not just about satisfying our own curiosity. It's also about understanding our place in the world and our relationship with other species.
Right. If we can acknowledge that animals might have some sense of fairness, it could change how we treat them.
It's like we're being challenged to expand our circle of compassion to include not just our fellow humans, but also the animals we share this planet with.
It's a powerful idea, and it could have a real impact on how we approach animal welfare conservation and even our relationship with the natural world as a whole.
It's about recognizing that we're all connected in some way
Mm.
and that our actions have consequences for other living beings.
Exactly. It's a reminder that we need to be more mindful of our impact on the world around us.
So even though the scientific debate about animal fairness is still going on, the implications of this research are huge.
It's making us question our assumptions about animal intelligence and forcing us to confront some uncomfortable truths about our own behavior.
And maybe, just maybe, these insights will inspire us to create a better future for all living beings.
A future where fairness and compassion are guiding principles in how we interact with the natural world.
I love that. That's definitely a future worth striving for.
And it starts with understanding and appreciating the amazing diversity and complexity of life on Earth.
Well said. And as we wrap up this deep dive into the fascinating world of animal fairness, I hope you're leaving with a sense of wonder and a newfound appreciation for the animals we share this planet with.
And remember, this is just the beginning. There's so much more to learn and discover about the animal mind and the mysteries it holds.
So keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep an open mind. You never know what amazing insights might be waiting just around the corner. It really makes you think, huh? We'd like to believe we're the only ones who care about fairness, but what if we're not alone in that?
Yeah, it really challenges our assumptions about where we fit in with the rest of the animal kingdom.
Exactly. And if even animals can sense unfairness in their own way, shouldn't that change how we treat them? Like, especially the ones we're responsible for.
It definitely raises some ethical questions about how we interact with animals.
It's like saying, okay, we know they need food and shelter and all that, but maybe we should also be thinking about treating them fairly.
Right. Recognizing that they might have some understanding of what's fair and what's not.
So it's not just about their physical needs, it's about their social and maybe even emotional well-being too.
Exactly. It's about moving beyond this purely human-centered worldview and acknowledging that other species might have more in common with us than we realized.
Yeah. It's like expanding our circle of compassion to include all those other amazing creatures out there.
I like that. It's about recognizing the interconnectedness of all living things and understanding that our actions have ripple effects far beyond our own little bubble.
So even though the science is still debating the finer points of fairness in animals, there's no denying that these findings have some pretty big implications.
They really make you stop and think, don't they?
They do, and they force us to confront some uncomfortable questions about our own behavior.
Like, are we living up to our own standards of fairness?
Yeah. And are we giving animals the respect they deserve as fellow sentient beings?
It's a challenge for sure, but it's also an opportunity to do better.
I agree. And you know what I find so inspiring about all this research is that it's not just about highlighting the problems, it's also about opening up new possibilities.
What do you mean?
Well, if we can learn to see the world through the eyes of other species, maybe we can start to build a future where fairness and compassion aren't just human ideals, but something we strive for in all our interactions with the natural world.
That's a beautiful thought. A world where we recognize and respect the shared experiences and capacities that connect us to all living beings.
Exactly. And maybe by understanding how fairness works in other animals, we can even learn some lessons about how to create a more just and harmonious society for ourselves.
That's a great point. Sometimes we can learn a lot by looking beyond our own species.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the fascinating world of animal fairness, I hope you're leaving with a sense of wonder, a newfound appreciation for the animal mind, and maybe even a little bit of hope for the future.
And remember, this is just the beginning of the journey. There's still so much more to learn and discover about the incredible diversity and complexity of life on Earth.
So keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep an open mind to all the amazing possibilities that await us.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
And until next time, keep those curious minds engaged.